Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are doing Season 1, Episode 8, entitled The Passenger. This episode aired February 22nd, 1993. Before we jump into this episode, is there anything we need to talk about from the previous podcast or any of the previous podcasts?
No, I think they're all perfect.
I don't think they're all perfect, but I will say that now that we have started releasing these out into the world, we've been getting some messages from people. We're a little bit ahead in our recording from what we've been releasing, so there's always going to be a bit of a lag. But I did get an email indicating that I should look into this issue of stardates being real or fake. So I did. What I found is that I was actually more correct than I thought, and some of the stardates really were just made up, especially in the early episodes of the original series.
So you can just make up the dates and say, hey, I'm being canon.
At least early on. They got a little bit more specific later, and it also sounds like the different universes, like the Kelvin timeline, that they've got their own version of it, and then the Next Generation, they had their own version of it. But there's still also some evidence in Next Gen of the numbers going forwards and backwards, so still not super specific. They weren't perfect with those numbers ever, so I don't feel so bad about thinking that they're just made up. All right, let's jump into this episode.
Okay, sounds good.
The cold open is Bashir and Kira in a shuttle, and Kira is saying that she's never seen anything like that, where a tricorder clearly showed that a woman was dead, and then she wasn't. Bashir says, tricorders, very accurate with live people, not so accurate with dead ones.
That's a good tip of the week. Do not use tricorders with dead people.
He says we learned that first year of medical school. And she says, well, I was very impressed. Bashir says, well, you should have been. I impressed myself on that one, actually.
Could he be any more full of himself?
Definitely.
He's so impressive.
He says, I can't imagine what other doctor would even consider examining the scapular nodes for parasitic infection. I just seem to have a talent, I suppose. It's almost ridiculous how unlikable they've made him.
Yeah.
He says, fate has granted me a gift, Major, and she is looking less and less impressed the more he talks.
A gift to be truly aggravating to everybody around me.
She says, I feel privileged to be in your presence. And he says, not getting that she's being sarcastic.
Oh, yeah. She totally delivers a burn, and he misses it completely.
Totally. He says, I'm just glad to have you along. Like, I need someone to worship me, so it's a good thing you were here for that.
I'm glad I have a peasant on board to appreciate my glorious sunfulness.
Oh, totally. She turns her chair around and says, did anyone ever tell you that you're... And before she can say conceited ass, they get a priority 1 broadband distress signal.
Well, we did learn something very important in this scene. Do not use tricorders on zombies. Tricorders and zombies are going to be useless.
Good to know.
Yeah.
A Kobliad transport ship is calling for anyone to help, saying their central power linkage has exploded and they're losing life support. Kira says she reads energy leakage and the aft structural integrity field is failing. We've had a lot of integrity fields failing so far in these first 8 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Tosk was suffering from that problem as well.
That's right. They hail the distress ship saying that they're on their way, and then they beam onto the other ship. As soon as they materialize, they start coughing from the smoke, and Bashir says oxygen levels are dropping and toxic gas levels are rising. There's only 10 minutes of breathing time left. Couldn't they have brought some masks with them? I mean, they must have known that they were entering a toxic environment. They should have even just done a scan.
Put some breathing equipment on. Plus, they've already got nice lungfuls of carcinogens.
Yeah, that's right. Kira heads off to check the power linkage and maybe find a fire extinguisher or two. And Bashir finds somebody lying on the floor. He gives her some kind of shot, which wakes her. And he says, relax, I'm a doctor. He's just so unimpressive.
Relax, I'm a genius, impressive doctor.
Gosh. He asks if anyone else is in the ship, and she says that the pilot is dead. He says he's reading a life form behind this door, and the door is locked. She tells him, don't open the door, but she's too weak to stop him. She says the prisoner she was transporting started the fire in order to escape, and he's behind the door. Bashir just totally ignores her, opens the door, finds the room is on fire, and finds the prisoner unconscious on the floor. She keeps telling him that he's dangerous, and Bashir says he's not dangerous in this condition. Then Kira comes in, saying that the power link think he just shot, and the maneuvering subsystems are out, so they'll have to tow the ship. She's got her arms covered in like some big fire retardant type sleeves.
Yeah, it looks like she managed to find some like super long length oven gloves.
Yeah, they're like
and a fire extinguisher.
Fire extinguisher sleeves.
Yeah.
And she just puts out the fire. Look, she's amazing. She stabilized structural integrity, she says, for now, which must have taken her 30 seconds. She wasn't gone that long. And she's also put the fire out.
Yeah, and found some super extended length oven gloves.
Right. Bashir says he can't get a neural reading from the patient. That's the guy on the floor. And he has to get him to the emergency unit on the runabout. Kira says, 4 to transport, just as the patient reaches up and grabs Julian by the throat, kind of strangling him. And he creepily and dramatically says, "Make me live." Then he dies.
Not creepy at all.
And then the other woman collapses too.
Isn't that basically the plot of like every horror movie from the mid-80s? You know, the dead person isn't actually dead.
But we don't know that yet. Dun, dun, dun. And Julian says, "This one I can't bring back."
Oh.
And then we cue the theme song.
And the long opening credits. I don't think you've made a comment on the slow-moving comet for a couple of episodes.
I haven't. I'm used to it. I like to take notes during that part. Look, I said it. I like that theme song. I think it's great. It's just slow. Now we're back on Deep Space Nine and in medical. And Julian is waking the patient from the Kobliad ship. That's the woman, not the man who he found dead on the floor. And he tells her where she is, saying they're on DS9. Her name is Ty Kajada, Kobliad Security. Then she has like a little panic, and she says, DS9, that's where the prisoner, who she calls Vantika, was going. Where is he? Bashir says he's dead. She wants to see his body. Julian has him in stasis and shows her the body and says he died of a massive pulmonary failure brought on by the fire. And she asks if he's sure it's the same body, which is, what's going on there? She asks if he's run a retinal imaging scan to ensure there's no residual activity in the visual cortex. So she either thinks this is not the guy who she had on the other ship, or he's faking his death and it is him.
She very much wants to make sure it's really him.
Yeah.
And he's really dead.
Bashir keeps saying he's really dead, but apparently this guy's faked his death many times before. She says that the word murder doesn't even begin to do justice to the horrors he's responsible for. She says he's quite brilliant, a man of science who used others to prolong his own life. Like, uh-oh.
Oh, so he used others to prolong his own life, so maybe he's a space vampire.
Maybe. She says that she's been tracking him for 20 years, and then she really dramatically stabs him in the chest. She stabs the dead guy in the chest with a knife, just making sure that he's dead.
That's great. I mean, she just pulls that really long knife from the table and then just thunk straight into the chest. No messing around.
He doesn't move because he's dead.
I mean, sometimes you just got to be sure they're really dead.
Yeah, she tells Julian that she needs an autopsy and to confirm his identity with a DNA reference scan. She still does not think that the guy is dead.
Wouldn't you want to confirm it's the guy before you stabbed him?
Well, that is funny. She stabbed him and then said, let's make sure that's really him.
Yeah, that could be very embarrassing later.
That would be embarrassing.
I do like the way Bashir is just wonderfully shocked by the stabbing. Great look there. Oh, you just stabbed the dead body. Okay. Obviously something that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I would venture to say he's never seen that before.
Didn't we have a whole piece earlier on about him saying how tricorders aren't very good with dead bodies? Therefore, him using a tricorder wouldn't necessarily mean they're really dead.
Yeah, my guess is they told us that for a reason.
Okay.
I mean, it's a 46-minute show, right? Usually when you get some kind of a little foreshadowing of something at the beginning, they make use of it again later, unless they're purposely trying to steer you in a different direction.
Oh, throw you a red herring.
Yeah. Kajada asks that somebody scan her ship and verify there are no anomalous life forms on board. And Bashir asks if that's really necessary. And she says about 3 inches from his face that she's very sure it's necessary. She's a close talker and she's quick with a knife. So I'd do what she asks.
Do what she says or you're going to get shanked.
We go to Quark's now. Quark is handing Dax an ice rack to Gino with extra cream. Dax thanks him and he says, at your service, day or night. Odo is listening in as Dax leaves and she wanders off to a table. And Quark says, poor woman, she's obviously infatuated with me. Why would he think that?
I think because Quark is slightly delusional. Actually, Odo correctly determines Quark is delusional.
At this point, I miss Voyager and Discovery, where we could just have scenes with women and men aren't just endlessly objectifying them. It's not that it never happened, but it wasn't in every single episode. I feel bad bad for Dax. I don't know. Does anybody take her seriously as a science officer except maybe Sisko and Odo? It's annoying.
I don't remember. Was creeping after women cool in the early 90s?
Was it ever cool? Not for the women. Odo says Quark is delusional. And Quark says there's nothing wrong with a good delusion. He sells them upstairs in the hollow suites every day. He says, besides, there's something in her eyes when she looks at me. And Odo says, an allergic reaction, no doubt.
Revulsion, probably.
He's good. Now we see somebody in a gold Starfleet uniform listening in on this conversation. He's kind of sitting behind Odo. I don't think we've seen him before, but he has a very disapproving face.
Also set up in the scene to signal that he's going to be important.
Yeah, well, that he's going to be involved in something.
Yeah, definitely more than an NPC.
Quark thinks that Dax is lonely, but Odo says she has 10 lifetimes worth of friends to call on before she'd call him, and every man on the station would like to buy her a Ractigino. And Quark says, yeah, but I'm the one with the Ractigino machine.
Can't you use a replicator to make Ractiginos?
I didn't know that Quark was also a barista.
Oh, well, he's also a barkeep.
He doesn't like to be called that. Someone should have called him a barista. Odo says she prefers to spend her time alone, and he can understand that perfectly. Quark says, well, that makes her the perfect woman for you. And Odo says, yeah, but I wouldn't intrude on her privacy. Quark calls him pathetic and says that he wants everyone in the galaxy to be as lonely and miserable as he is, which seems accurate.
I don't know if he's miserable. He's definitely grumpy, but he doesn't seem that miserable. He seems to enjoy his grumpiness. He embraces it.
Quark says that some of us like company and the feel of smooth, pliant flesh as they show him drooling over Dax again. And Odo asks why he even bothers, and Quark says it's good to want things, especially things you can't have. Is it? Is it good to want things, especially things you can't have? What's that good for?
Is that a Ferengi rule of acquisition?
No, it's not. I went and looked.
I will take your word on that.
It's just another example of Quark creeping on Dax. Or anyone creeping on Dax. And then saying that it's okay. It's like, really? Move on to something. Move on to somebody else who's interested in you and just leave her alone. She's just trying to live her life. One of her many lives.
Maybe Odo should investigate the creeping problem that seems to be rampant on Deep Space Nine.
He doesn't care about that. Nobody cares about that. That's the problem.
Odo isn't into coupling.
No. All right, so after Quark says that it's good to want things, especially things you can't have, Odo sort of pivots around and looks at him and says, like the Duridium shipment? Quark plays dumb as we now do a close-up on the Starfleet guy with the frowny face. And Odo says, I'm watching you, Quark. And Quark says he's watching Jadzia. And she smiles at him just sort of randomly from a distance, and he runs off to talk to her.
And I thought that was kind of interesting as well. Quark really doesn't seem to have a poker face. I mean, Odo brings that up, and Quark is basically extremely poorly hiding the fact that he knows about it. I wonder again if that's part of the character of Quark that they're building up here. Quark likes to think he's a smoother operator than he really is. Certainly at this point in the story, you're seeing Quark as not the businessman and the villain that he likes to think he is.
Yeah, he always seems surprised when Odo is onto him, and Odo is always onto him.
Yeah.
Maybe we're supposed to think that he's also got a bunch of other things going on that Odo doesn't know about that we don't see.
I think that's partly the implication, that he has his hand in everything, but he just doesn't give the impression in the episodes of being really that sort of ahead of the game.
Right. Frowny face guy now moves himself in front of Odo and says, it's an interesting technique to leak word of an important operation to the local black market. Odo looks him up and down and says, that's none of your beeswax. But oh, guess what? It is. He's Lieutenant George Primmin from Starfleet Security. And you'd think as head of security, Odo would have known someone from Starfleet Security had arrived on the station.
Well, you'd think protocol might be sending Odo a memo. By the way, a Starfleet security person is going to be coming, and they're totally Starfleet, so they have a stick up their butt.
But it's a Starfleet stick.
Starfleet rulebook, probably.
So Primmin, who henceforth will be known as Frowny-Face, says he wants to talk about the Duridium shipment from the Gamma Quadrant. And Odo says there's nothing to discuss, but he says he wants to go over it anyhow because it took him 3 weeks to get to DS9, and he'd hate to think it was for nothing. So Odo kind of begrudgingly says fine.
So it takes 3 weeks to get there. Maybe these are punishment postings.
Out in the boonies. Yeah, not a lot of shuttles going that way.
Yeah.
Only the slow-moving buses.
Only the crop duster shuttles.
I'm picturing, like, those old white school buses that are broken down. That's what it is. We go to Ops now, and Bashir is briefing Kira, Dax, and Sisko, and he says there was nothing out of the ordinary in the autopsy. All the records matched what Kajada had provided. Vantika is dead. He's not faking it. Sisko asks, why was he coming to DS9 in the first place? And Bashir says, well, because they're Kobliad. Apparently, the Kobliad is a dying race, and they need duridium to stabilize their cell structure and prolong their lifespan. The Federation has been supplying them with duridium, but even the new deposits from the Gamma Quadrant, the one on that shipment Odo was talking about, is not enough to service the entire population. So Vantika was probably coming here to hijack the shipment.
Oh, so it's kind of like toilet paper in our world.
Yeah, we definitely cut that out. Sisko asks if Kajada is satisfied with the results of the autopsy, and Bashir says, no way. Dax says, well, she's spent her entire life chasing after Vantika, and in a way, they are as intimately connected as two beings can be. It's a very funny thing for a Trill to say.
Yeah.
But really, she's as intimately connected with another being as anyone can be.
Yes, I would say a symbiotic relationship is probably a little bit closer.
Yeah. Sisko says to grant Kajada whatever she needs if her requests aren't too out of line. Go ahead and sweep the ship just as she asked. Then he very wisely says he's more concerned that he may have had help waiting here on the station than he is about Vantika really being alive somehow.
Sisko thinking about the bigger picture. Sisko is such a good character, it makes up for the flaws in the series.
Fanboy. Then Mr. Frowny-Face Primmin comes in, and Sisko says he wants to brief him on a security issue in his office. Kira says, oh, I'll get Odo, but Primmin says he'll fill Odo in later. This guy's very full of his own importance.
Kira gives a look in that scene.
Yeah, she squints her eyes suspiciously, and then Sisko also gives her a look, which I'd have no idea what that look meant. I got it kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I think that is it. We saw in the Dax episode, the working relationship between Sisko and Kira is already starting to become solidified. That look at Kira was an informal way of saying, yeah, I got this. I know what's going on. Don't worry about it. Right. It's reinforcing that we're starting to see a working organization forming.
Yeah. We go now into Sisko's office, and Sisko is asking the frowny-face guy how he is getting along with the constable. And he says he's sure that Odo is good at keeping order down in the promenade, but the security of a duridium shipment is over his head. And in his best condescending way, he says, Odo was chatting about it in the bar with Quark. I thought, tattletale. He's telling on Odo.
Yes.
Oh, this guy. Sisko says it's very hard to keep a secret in a place like this because it's not a starship. So it's not full of people who are in Starfleet or part of the Federation.
I think what you're seeing here is a little bit of personal conflict with Odo, which is not terribly Gene Roddenberry version of Star Trek, but I personally like it. It's a little bit more soapy. Okay. And also, Starfleet security is probably a little bit outside their comfort zone and what they're used to.
Because it's a more uncontrolled environment.
It's not a Starfleet station, and he doesn't have overall control.
It's a flea market.
Yes. Miles's line will never die in this podcast.
I've been at a flea market. It's full of lots of random strange people. I love that line. I can't believe I never heard it before. And by the way, where is Miles? He's still not here.
I believe he's hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as he comes back to the station, they're going to make him start fixing everything again.
That's true. This is just the second full episode without him, which is weird.
Yeah.
And they don't even talk about him in this episode. At least in the last episode, they say, oh, he's off with his mother-in-law, his 100-year-old mother-in-law. Sisko tells the frowny-face guy that Odo probably just wanted to make sure that Quark knew that we know he knows.
Wasn't that a line from Friends?
It was. Phoebe said, they don't know, we know, they know, we know.
Right. But what if Quark knows they know, he knows they know? That's the big question.
I don't think it matters. And then frowny-face guy says, it's not the way they taught us at the academy, is it, sir? With this very smug, annoying face and tone.
Oh, awesome. Just what you want, a rule book checker.
Yeah. He says, if you want my opinion, and Sisko cuts him off and says he doesn't want his opinion. He says, we're guests of the Bajorans on this station. Don't forget what you learned at the academy, but don't throw it in people's faces. If you're really smart, you just might learn something from Odo.
Boom. That's all I can say. This is how things work here, and I'm running it.
Yeah. Then he tells him about a plot to hijack the Duridium shipment and says he and Odo should talk to Kajada.
Oh, Sisko is just laying down the law here. And I like the way Avery eases between the facets of this character just so easily. The flow is so smooth.
Now we go to Odo's office, and Frowny-Face Guy enters, and he apologizes for getting off on the wrong foot with Odo. He says no hard feelings, and he shakes Odo's hand. Odo looks a little suspicious. He says he respects Odo's opinion, even though he's from Starfleet Command. So, I don't know, I felt like the snootiness really continues, and Odo wasn't super thrilled with what he said.
Really?
Yeah, like, I respect your opinion, even though I'm the high and mighty Starfleet security guy. That's the way I heard it.
Oh, interesting. I guess I took this scene as very Star Trek. I mean, he was moving beyond petty rivalries and apologized to Odo. I thought that seemed very genuine. Even though he did deliver that final line, I thought it was a move to show that he does really want to work with Odo. I saw it as genuine.
I did not.
They could have written it that way to make it appear, is it a ruse?
True, because at one point they want you to consider that the security guy could be Vantika.
Yeah, I mean, another red herring thrown in there.
Yep.
Is he really who he says he is?
Odo tells Primmin that he can see his plans, and he said, but I've taken every precaution. Saying that everything is covered is just a way in a TV show to say that something bad is about to happen. Because the next thing that happens is that Odo's console says, database services not available. He calls Ops and asks Kira what's happening. She pushes a few buttons and says, everything in active memory has been accessed and purged. Oh, classic. Forgot to secure the cache.
Someone just hacked the computer and reformatted the hard drive. Awesome.
Not the hard drive. That seems to throw them from here, right? We're going to have a couple conversations about memory that I do not think are entirely accurate. Odo says, that's impossible. Just as Kajada appears and says, oh, it's possible, Vantika did the exact same thing on Rigel 7, and we get worried looks into the ad break.
At this moment, I'm picturing somebody in IT shouting in Ops, have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah. Now we're in Ops, and Kajada says she's learned to think like Vantika, so she knows that it's him. Bashir says it can't be him, he's dead, but she says he's alive, and the first thing he did when he got on board was find a way into the security files, and that's exactly what has happened. Frowny-Face says it makes no sense that he would purge an entire computer memory just to go after a single file. Odo's like, that makes perfect sense because that single file was probably protected, but the active memory wasn't. Kajada says, this is the best part of the whole thing. Kajada says, you would never consider locking out the active memory of your entire system. Really? So you've taken all the stuff from your computer and you've put it into memory and you've secured all the computers, but you haven't secured the memory, and you think nobody would think that was a good idea?
And it's like shared unprotected memory across all systems?
Well, Kira says it would make it impossible to use the computers at all. No.
I'm guessing the writers had limited computer exposure.
Oh, this was funny. I was really amused by this.
It's a Unix system.
Dax asks how he would gain access, and Kajada says he used a subspace shunt in the past, attaching it to a secondary system. This is a good example of somebody put a couple of words together that didn't mean anything, but once combined, they're like, hey, we have a thing. Subspace shunt. When I Googled it, the only reference I could find was this episode. Some made up thing.
I'm picturing the writer's room where somebody came up with subspace shunt and everybody around the table goes, oh yeah, that's good. Let's write that one down, subspace shunt.
No, it's good. So anyway, she says he would have attached it to some secondary system that runs throughout the station and isn't covered by security. Why do we have secondary systems not covered by security? We've got little devices attached somewhere all the time.
I'm just picturing the station is full of open Ethernet ports everywhere.
Yeah. Let's just plug something in here. Ugh.
Just plug in and get onto the system backbone.
Nobody would ever think to protect that Ethernet port. Where the heck is Miles? If Miles is watching this, he's just very upset.
I bet their wireless password is 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, like on my luggage.
We already covered that all the PIN numbers were 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God. Odo said, no, later in this episode, he says he changed the codes. And I'm guessing he changed them all to 4321.
Nobody will ever guess that.
So Dax starts looking into the secondary systems, and she finds an unauthorized tap from a temperature control panel. Man, security is just sucking on this station.
Shouldn't the warnings happen automatically? Shouldn't you have some kind of scan going on?
We've talked about this so many times. Odo's not watching all those log files. This is where you need Data, who can read stuff super fast.
Well, he probably would have protected the systems with a fractal algorithm.
Kajada looks really smug about this, like, told you so.
Very smug.
Odo and the Frowny-Face guy at the same time call for security to go to that level, and Odo is outraged because the guy's doing the thing that he's doing.
Odo gives such a great
funny.
Look back at him.
He's just so mad. Kajada says he's probably also secured this device, whatever his subspace shunt is, with an auto-destruct. And Kira asks, how can you know that for certain? And she says she knows Vantika, and that's what he would do.
Perhaps she is actually Vantika. She
Maybe.
seems to know a lot about him.
True. Who's watching her when she's not talking to them?
Exactly.
Sisko says he's having a tough time with her theory that Vantika's alive. The guy's body's in the morgue, and so he's like, what is it, a ghost? Of course, being the smart one, he says, it just seems more likely he's got an accomplice, that there's somebody here carrying out what he wanted to have happen. But she says, don't patronize me. Vantika is obsessed with his own survival. He's prolonged his life through the use of drugs, cryogenics, transplants, and when he was the medical supervisor in a high-security penitentiary, he used prisoners in illegal experiments of cellular longevity. He sounds fun.
He's just a nice guy all around.
He's just a scientist.
I just conduct unethical experiments. What's the big deal?
And also she says that when he started the fire on her ship, he had a plan to survive. So even though, it looks like he's dead, she's like, he is not dead.
And he knew there's no fire extinguishers within easy reach for any of the crew.
Apparently.
Definitely not up to code.
Sisko asks when they will get the results of the DNA trace back, and Bashir says probably another 12 hours. So Sisko says they're going to operate under the assumption that Vantika is still alive. And then Odo asks to speak to Sisko in his office because, of that outrage from a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this is a good move by the leader here on the Leadership Podcast, that even though you don't have any real hard evidence that this guy is alive and you're pretty sure he's not and that really he's got an accomplice, he's listening to this person who has a ton of experience with Vantika, and she's making a pretty reasonable argument, even though him still being alive doesn't seem reasonable. Still, the things that she's saying make sense.
There's a lot of circumstantial evidence that somebody is helping, even if it is not Vantika.
Him putting a little bit of confidence in her will mean that she'll help them, that she'll still continue to support them. Now we go back into Sisko's office, and Odo says he's resigning. He's such a drama queen.
Is he trying to rival Q for most overdramatic creature in the galaxy?
Along with being a constant downer, he also overreacts to everything. He's so emotional. I thought when he first came in there and said that, I thought he was resigning because his lax security had allowed Vantika into the computer system. But no, it's because he doesn't like Primmin. Odo says to Sisko, you asked me to stay in charge of security when you took command. I didn't ask you. And then Sisko calls him constable and tries to chill him out, and this irks Odo. He says using the word constable, it's very cute, and Sisko says it's an expression of affection. And you should always make sure someone at work, in particular, really wants your expression of affection before forcing it on them and then telling him it's a compliment. There's my leadership tip. You know what? That's just normal management. They don't like it. You gotta fix that. Odo says he doesn't need affection, but clear jurisdiction or he quits. And Sisko says, in this kind of familiar tone, I like you, Odo. I always know where you stand. I need you here. But he says, you must realize that there's no chance Starfleet wouldn't send some kind of security in to protect their interests. And Odo is like, okay, I get that. He says, so learn to work with Primmin. Odo says he wants to know who's in charge, and Sisko says Odo is. And then the big baby says, oh, well, I can live with that arrangement. And then he leaves. It's like, yeah, I think that was some interesting leadership.
I think what we're seeing here is a political Sisko and his ability to manipulate.
And definitely playing to Odo's ego as well. I see him deliberately trying to disarm Odo by using that charm and to be familiar with him and to deliberately put Odo sort of off his guard. Odo is looking for conflict. Sisko is
so
coming in
emotional.
and being friendly. And I would say using that as a weapon. Avery is just nailing it, I think. It's just perfect.
I love the fanboy in you. It's so cute. But I look at the way he talked to Primmin and the way he talks to Odo. If you look at an org chart, Primmin reports to him. It's a hard line. Odo is more of a dotted line because really he's been on the station before. He's worked under other rule before.
Yes.
And he's kind of already established himself there, and he's got his own way of doing things and obviously his own personality.
Right.
But in this situation, because Primmin is a subordinate and he's using a much harder line, and he wants him to understand that he's in charge and that there's no flexibility of who's in charge. And that's really important to him. But when he talks to Odo and he goes into that more familiar tone, he wants to disarm him, just like you said, and show him that, hey, see, we're in this together. Yeah. We're on the same page. You're in charge, clearly. Even though, as a true leader, he might not really think that, but that's not the point.
And I think an important thing here is that Sisko needs Odo to succeed. And Sisko recognizes that as a requirement. I mean, I don't mean in succeed in just this episode and securing the shipment. I mean succeed in his mission.
I do feel obligated to point one thing out.
What's that?
Remember in episode 2, which is past prologue, remember there's that scene where Sisko kind of manhandles Kira.
Yes.
And makes her see that he's in charge. And he does it with this use of force. This is where he kind of loses me.
Because he behaves differently with Odo.
Yes. He hasn't done that to anyone except Kira. Why?
Now, do you think the reason for that could be Kira's background as a fighter and as a warrior? I mean, in the Resistance, was hierarchy maintained by physical strength and combat? I'll also point out that we see Kira's first reaction in many situations is a combat reaction.
Often to shoot.
Yes.
But she doesn't.
Mostly because she ends up getting talked out of it.
Yeah.
But her first reaction is still to take the military or the aggressive approach.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. The only other thing that I would say it is the tightrope that we're walking is that depending on what perspective you look at it from, it can really look like you are trying to show that you have the physical power over a female.
Oh, okay. That's a different take. Yes.
And that I really take issue with.
Okay, yeah. I can see that as a very genuine concern.
Yes. All right, now we go to Dax's lab. Sisko enters, asking Dax if she found anything on the Kobliad ship because she ran the scan. She says she didn't really find anything interesting in the scan, but somebody did try to break into the ship's cargo hold since it's been in dock on DS9. So something is going on. She thinks that they were after this little memory device that she found in Vantika's personal belongings, so they already had that on the station, I guess, and it wasn't in the cargo hold anymore. So she plugs this memory device into something that reads it, and she says it's a map of the humanoid brain. I like the use of humanoid in this context. Like any humanoid has the same brain?
Oh, yeah. They're all the same.
Yeah. What's the definition of a humanoid?
I think just human shape.
Yeah. So why would the brains be the same? Anyway.
Potentially, you'd have very different evolutionary paths that led to brain development.
Right.
So
that was kind of my question.
Hand waving in the writer's room.
Yeah. Anyway, she shows this up on the screen, this humanoid brain, and it's this very fuzzy image of an all gold brain. So it's the man with the golden brain.
This scene, though, does have a nice piece of science future in it. The little memory device that she has.
Yeah.
I mean, what's funny is just a few years later, we end up with the multimedia cards and SD cards, which was like 97, I think it was, 97 and 98.
Yeah, that look very similar to this.
So it's a nice pointer to the future that multimedia cards are still around.
Well, yeah, and in the previous episode, that guy, you know, who was played by Phoebe's father-in-law, Elon, he had a warrant on a little memory device as well. Yeah. That actually looked like a USB drive.
Kind of nice, science fiction devices becoming actual real things in our world.
Okay, we go to Quark's now, and it's dark, and they're cleaning up. Quark is crawling around on the floor of the second level, and he's yelling at the two below. One of them is his brother, right?
Yeah, Rom.
But I don't know who the other one is. But anyway, he's yelling at them, "You call this clean? I've already found 3 coins on the floor."
The other one is a Ferengi NPC.
He says somebody could have lost valuable jewelry, and then you'd have never even noticed it. So he tells them to get out. He'll do it himself, and he's going to keep whatever he finds.
How desperate a Ferengi are you?
But I think when it comes to any kind of money or profit, I don't think they care how they look. It's all about the money.
I feel that he's chasing the small change when he's trying to look like a big dollar player and he's looking for nickels.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Well, after they leave and he's still crawling around on the floor, he finds another coin and he laughs at himself and puts it in his pocket. And now you kind of realize that the whole point of this was to get him by himself in the dark, because then somebody grabs him from behind and asks if he's made the preparations for the Duridium shipment. He says to Quark that he was supposed to hire mercenaries to help him. And Quark, realizing it's Vantika, says he hired some reliable soldiers of fortune, but he'd heard that Vantika was dead. And this person who's whispering, because you can't see him, he says, "Oh, almost," in this really funny voice. And then he throws Quark to the floor and he leaves. You can pretty much tell that that's Bashir, right? You can kind of hear in his whisper that that's him.
The voice is not very well disguised.
And then also you pointed out that you paused it and you could see that it was Bashir as well.
Yeah, I think you could see it was Julian at that point.
But we're not supposed to know. We're still not supposed to know that it's Bashir.
One question I want to ask is, I wonder what it's like employing Ferengis. I mean, I have the feeling that it would be a nightmare to actually have Ferengis. I bet they're going to be surly. They're going to try and steal your ideas or your business. Or I think perhaps more likely, I'm betting they would actually be running a business within your business. They'd be selling stuff to your customers.
Oh, they're definitely running multiple side businesses within your business. Yeah. Absolutely. That would be normal and expected. They'd probably be surprised if you weren't.
Which would also raise the question of, as a Ferengi, why would you ever employ other Ferengis? Unless they were family, because remember the rule of acquisition? Exploitation begins at home.
That's true, but also one of the rules is that you don't trust anyone taller than you. And all the Ferengis are short.
Ah, okay, so that's a very good point.
That limits the people you can hire, I guess, to children and Ferengi.
Oh, I bet he's not paying Rom either.
Oh, for sure. He's probably paying him in the coins he finds on the floor.
That's why he's so desperate to find coins.
You can keep all the coins you find. Okay, we go to medical now, and Bashir is treating an NPC. Kajada enters, and Bashir says that he has the results of the DNA scan that she's been looking for, and he says he tried to call her last night, but she didn't answer. She says she has trouble sleeping and had to use an alpha wave inducer. It's sad we haven't solved insomnia in the future. And Bashir kind of warns her off, of this thing, saying it's, what does he say? It's addictive or something.
They're still using devices to help them sleep that are habit forming.
They tell you this only so that you are suspicious that she's Vantika.
Another pointer, too. Could she really be Vantika?
Bashir says, look, this dead guy is definitely Vantika. We've done all of the scans. We've compared them to the reference scan. It's definitely him. And she says, well, they missed something, because she doesn't believe it. She's like, guy's not dead.
I like her single-minded pursuit of this. He's definitely not dead. It's like, how many bodies can you show her? And she's still not convinced.
Well, guess what? She's right.
Maybe she's Vantika. That it's all a big ruse.
Maybe. Dax calls for Bashir to come to her lab. Dax is looking at the image of the golden brain and asks if a body could die, but the consciousness lives on in another brain. She says she's got this theory. Bashir says the closest thing he's ever seen is synaptic pattern displacement, but that's never been done by a non-Vulcan.
It could probably be done by an android if they read a book about it.
Oy. I'm just going to keep going. Dax is sure this is what Vantika was working on because there were simulations in his files. And she asks what happens if another entity shared the unused portion of a brain. And Bashir says, well, then Vantika could just be waiting in someone's brain. But whose? Kajada? Dax says, well, they're both Kobliad, and what better place to hide than in the mind of your worst enemy, very Legion.
That's a good red herring there.
What was the bad guy's name on Legion?
Farouk.
Okay, that's a very popular myth about only a small part of the brain being used. I went and looked this up and was reading a neurologist talking about it, and it's complete garbage.
Really?
Yes, the question is how much of the brain is being used simultaneously, but pretty much the whole brain is used. This is a persistent myth that continues to this day, but it isn't based on reality.
Learned something new today. Back in Sisko's office now, and he says it makes no sense that Vantika is controlling Kajada. Dax says we aren't suggesting he's controlling her, he's just stowed away in her brain, and she doesn't even know it. Sisko asks, how can we confirm this? But Bashir says, we don't even know what to look for yet. We have to figure out how he got in there before we'd be able to, really see that he's there somehow or scan for it.
Sisko seems very skeptical of...
Yes. Well, nothing that she's done makes her look guilty.
I should point out that Dax is actually looking sciencey at this point, if you notice. She's actually doing sciencey things and doing this research.
Man, nobody's creeping on her. It's amazing how when you just let a woman do her job, she's great at it. Anyway.
They're starting to build the character. That's the takeaway here.
I'll take that. Odo says that he could ask someone to surveil Kajada, follow her around. Frowny-Face guy frowns and shakes his head, saying, we're stretched too thin already. He can just have the computer track her and alert us if she goes near any secured area. Why haven't we used that before? Why is that the first time we've ever heard of that?
Does Odo suddenly say, oh, we have that ability?
Maybe Odo says, dude, we are not on a starship. We don't have that.
Oh, that would be funny, yeah.
We have people in hoods hiding behind grates. We have no idea what's going on back there.
Yeah, well, maybe he could do that. Odo could say, I'll ask the guys who hide behind the grates to keep an eye out on her.
For now, they just decide they're going to leave her out of plans for the Duridium shipment, and they know that's going to irritate her. And Odo says, oh, she gets mad, just send her to me. And in the very next scene, she's mad and yelling at Odo. Thought that was a cute little transition.
Yeah, Odo is a little bit of an ass in that scene.
Kajada is asking why the security codes have been changed to 4321, and she can't get into the computer now.
Well, everybody else seems to be able to get into the computer. Why can't she?
All she needs is some little box, and she just pops open a panel and sticks the box onto it, and she's in.
Just find an open Ethernet port and plug her laptop in.
She asks what kind of fool he is, and he says the kind that is his own special variety. Best line of the episode.
That was a nice burn back.
She says she's the only one with experience on Vantika, and Odo says only 4 people now have access. Odo, Kira, Sisko, and Frowny Guy.
This does show how obsessed she is with catching Vantika.
But like Dax said, it's been her life's work, and she's seeing all these signs that he's still alive because these things that he's done before are happening.
I wonder if that's part of the frustration that character is feeling in these situations, if she's seen him do all these things.
I'm sure it really frustrates her that she's not getting support all of a sudden.
Yeah, and maybe this is exactly the same thing that's happened before, that she hasn't got the support and he's just got away with it. Even though she's been saying he's going to do this, he's going to do that, this is what's going to happen, and boom, it's exactly played out as she's predicted, and nobody's listened to her.
So she changes tactics a little bit and asks if he's watching Quark. And she says he has his hands in everything. And Odo says he always has an eye on him, which I think he's proven many times.
Yeah.
But she says Quark is the exact kind of person Vantika would use in his plans. Then she stomps out the door.
It's interesting that she has Quark down pretty quick.
She's no dummy. She's been following this criminal her whole life. She knows what's going on.
So it certainly shows that she has a level of competence in here.
Yeah. We go back to Quark's and it's dark again. I don't know what's going on. Why we're always at Quark's in the dark in this episode.
Surely if you're a Ferengi and you want to maximize profits, you're going to keep the bar open 24/7.
Right, like Vegas. Open all the time.
If I was Quark's business advisor, I'd certainly advise him to stay open 24/7.
Yeah, he's losing money. Except he's closing to make these shady deals, or he's probably making the real money. I don't know. Because he's whispering with his soldiers of fortune here in the dark.
Couldn't you use the terrorist meeting room? The one out the back where you meet with Klingons?
Right, where Odo is disguised as a rat. So Quark is talking here to the soldiers of fortune that he hired, and they want to know when they're going to get paid. And when they meet Vantika, Quark says, you'll get paid when the job is done, and you'll meet Vantika when he's ready. And the guy's like, I want 70% up front. And all of this really, this whole conversation is just kind of filler, because what they want is to show you that Kajada, somehow she's sneaked in, and she's up on the 3rd level of Quark's. I didn't even know there were 3 levels until this episode. I thought there were only 2, but she's up on the 3rd level, and she's kind of sneaking around and trying to eavesdrop and hear their conversation. And you don't really know if she hears it.
Yeah, I made the assumption she didn't hear anything that was going on.
She's quite a ways away from them.
That she could just see who was there and that something was going on, but she wasn't within earshot.
Right. And then while they're whispering, she suddenly screams, and then she falls from that high level down to the ground.
From that sort of gangway up high, So Odo is watching everything and knows exactly what Quark is up to and keeps his eye on everything at the station and brags about. So how did 3 mercenaries get onto the station without Odo knowing about it?
Yeah, we missed this.
Including one who'd been in a Cardassian jail as well.
That's a great question. Well, he might know.
There was not even an explanation for that.
Well, I think Odo is distracted because he's working on all of these security things around the Duridium shipment, and then they had that whole thing with the database wipe, and...
I suppose they could have used fake IDs or something.
He's distracted. Well, here's where it would have been handy if he had somebody following her, because Frowny-Face, remember, said, oh, we'll just track her, and if she gets near a secure area, then we'll know. But Quark's is not a secure area, so they wouldn't have even known. So his plan was useless.
They needed to hire some of the hooded guys to stand behind the grates and keep an eye on things.
That's what I said, man. Mm-hmm. There's 2 rooms. There's Ops, which has Sisko's office off of it. The Promenade, which has Quark's and Odo's office in the flea market. That's it.
We haven't seen the terrorist meeting room for a while.
We haven't seen that. And we also haven't seen the slow-moving elevator for a couple of episodes. But anyway, there's only those 2 rooms. So if you can't get into Ops, you only need some people behind the grates to watch what's going on in Quark's and the flea market. And you're covered.
Got it all covered.
Yeah, because the school, too. Is right off the Promenade. Although school's closed because Keiko's not there, so there's no school going on. After the ad break, we go to medical, and Bashir is attending to Kajada. She is just kind of waking up, and she says Vantika pushed her. Bashir says she can't remain conscious for long or she'll move too much and become paralyzed, which at first I thought, how far did she fall? That was when I backed up and realized, wow, she fell from the 3rd floor, not the 2nd floor. But I also thought this was very convenient. Oh no, we can't keep her conscious. We have to knock her out. Do you think that was Vantika or Bashir?
That's what I'm wondering, because that was very convenient. Keeping her under, she couldn't say there was something going on.
Right.
There's a couple of things in the scene. I think it clears up that she probably isn't Vantika.
Well, but remember, later in this scene, Sisko asks if it could have been a suicide attempt. At first, I thought that was a dumb question. Then Bashir says, well, who knows what the result of sharing one's brain might be.
Oh, that's a good point.
It still could have been Vantika to them.
Yeah.
Quark is also in the room in medical there because he must have called Bashir.
I'm guessing they have different HIPAA standards in the future, because when they have people in medical, they just seem to be treating people openly, letting anybody in.
Yes, no secrets. No secrets. Sisko asks Quark if he saw anyone else, and he says no. It's like, I was the only person there. And then he wonders, what was she doing up in the balcony anyway? And Odo tells him that she was suspicious that Quark was trying to hijack the Duridium shipment. Quark says he resents the inference and says he has to get back to cleaning, and he tries to leave. But Odo says he wants to look at the 3rd floor before Quark hides any evidence.
I would think before Quark called medical services, he would have already cleaned anything up.
Yeah, he would have hidden the evidence. Bashir says he will tend to her injuries before doing a brain scan, but he said it doesn't matter because he doesn't really know what to look for. They still don't know the method of brain transfer that Vantika would have used.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they cut the scene where Kajada wakes up and says, where's my wallet?
Or where she wakes up and goes, Bashir is the one who pushed me.
Oh, do you think she knew?
Yeah.
Oh, she did?
I think when she woke up and said Vantika, I think she was saying to Bashir, Vantika.
Oh.
Because she's not awake again, right? Until after the whole thing's over.
Oh, I missed that.
That's how I read it.
Oh, okay, that's a great take.
Now we go to the stasis room or the morgue, space morgue. And Dax is pulling something out from under the dead guy's fingernails. Sisko asks what she's looking for, and she says confirmation of a theory. She said she's been asking herself why anyone would induct a bioelectrical charge into a glial cell.
A great line from Sisko. A question I've always asked myself.
It's the kind of thing you would say when you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, she says it might make sense if you wanted to send a bio-coded message along the glial cells of someone's nervous system all the way to the brain. She's convinced that's what Vantika was doing, and he must have used his fingernails in a weak something with a weak charge, or something else would have detected that he had it on him. That's why she's checking under the fingernails. She says he would have ideally injected it into his victim, but he didn't have a hypospray or a needle. So let's think about, who did he grab by the throat right before he died?
Oh, he touched Bashir.
That's the only person.
I think they've given enough hints of who it is by this point.
And then she sees it, the microscopic generator under his fingernail. And now that we know what to look for, we should be able to scan Kajada. Or maybe you should scan Bashir.
Dax is definitely showing she's a science officer at this point. I don't think we've seen Dax being quite as scientific and investigative up until this point, and showing how smart she is. Because remember, in the last episode, it talked about all her degrees and all the qualifications she's achieved.
She's the exo-archaeologist and a zoologist.
Yeah.
We are somewhere on the station, and Kira is giving some NPCs last-minute instructions when Odo says, we only have an hour before the shipment arrives. He asks where Frowny-Face Primmin is, but she says she hasn't seen him. Uh-oh.
Also notice this was Bossy Kira.
We've seen Bossy Kira, maybe not this episode. Odo heads out to find Frowny-Face. Now we go to Quark walking through some hallway with his soldiers of fortune.
The March of the Mercenaries.
He's telling them he's just the middleman and he won't be going with them. One of the guys asks Quark how he got his hands on a Federation runabout, and Quark says Vantika did it, not him, and that he was going to meet them on the runabout. Quark is a really natty dresser. His clothes are always well-tailored and quite colorful.
He looks very sharp. He looks the part.
Yeah, he does.
Even if he isn't actually really the part when it comes down to it.
Continuing on the fashion part of the podcast, I noticed that they use a lot of purples in visitors to the station, because these guys now are wearing purple.
If we're talking about the fashion sense, the guy who is on the right behind them has totally read the book, How to Be a Pirate. He's got the headscarf, the earring. I was hoping at this point that he was going to say, "Arr."
He could have. They open the airlock to the ship, and Quark is quite stunned to see Bashir standing there. We're not.
It's the big reveal.
Quark starts apologizing and backing away, but Bashir makes it clear that he's actually Vantika. I wrote down, duh. And just to make sure you know that he's not Bashir and he's Vantika, he talks in these long, drawn-out words.
I did like that. I thought it was a nice
I thought it was ridiculous.
I thought it was a nice little touch from Siddiq.
Oh.
To put that into the character.
Yeah. And then we go to an ad break here after the big reveal.
I'm guessing Odo must have been completely focused on the Duridium shipment to miss these three complete reprobates, one even dressed like a pirate, and not had them followed or know what they're up to. I guess they must have used fake IDs or something.
Well, yeah, he's very distracted by the Duridium shipment, and now he's looking for Frowny-Face guy, so he's distracted by that as well.
That's true. The Frowny-Face guy could have thrown him off his normal balance because there's now like this rivalry.
Right. When we come back, we're in medical, and Dax is there looking for Bashir. She finds his communicator, but not him. Something that's happened now. I think this is the third time in 8 episodes that the communicator has been abandoned and the person is somewhere else.
Can we please start microchipping the Starfleet officers?
I don't think it's going to happen. Not in this season. Then Odo finds Frowny-Face, and he scolds him for not being in the docking bay. And Primmin says he took a cue from Odo when he said, avoid the single file and attack the system. So he figured Vantika knows all the security efforts are out on the docking ring, leaving other areas exposed. He found a glitch in the backup systems, tracking it back to the reclamation systems. Once again, the problem's in the trash.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking at the computers, and Frowny is checking the trash. Smart.
Yet another open Ethernet port.
Yes. Well, he found another subspace crossover shunt. He added a word in there. It's not just subspace shunt now.
Yeah.
Odo is very pleased. He says this would have shut us down for an hour. So maybe Frowny-Face isn't quite as useless as he thought.
He's not just the Starfleet stick in the mud that it makes it appear.
Right.
I thought it was quite interesting there that he was prepared to learn from Odo.
Yeah.
I think that points back to when he apologized to Odo and that it really was more genuine.
So I looked at it slightly more cynically, which Probably doesn't surprise you. But
He's supposed to be the
I
cynical
was thinking he was like buttering up Odo by being like, oh, I got this idea from you. Looked, and I found this thing, and see how smart you are. And now he's Odo's friend.
Wow, you went really negative.
Odo inspired me. Now we go to Ops, and the Norkova has come through the wormhole. Sisko says, security alert, yellow. He also says to maintain security at Bay 8, which was the main plan where they were going to send the ship. He says, but send it to the second backup location as a diversion. Then Odo comes in and he gives credit to Primmin for finding the shunt. So he's saying, hey, this guy doesn't suck. That's great. Kira asks if Odo deployed a runabout to escort the Norkova. And it's like, nah, no matter what, security's just haywire in this place. Everything goes wrong all the time.
They never expected it to be somebody on the Starfleet side, but surely that would have been a security.
Why?
I know, right?
Why didn't they suspect it?
Right.
The only guy he touched was Bashir, and Dax figured out that it was a thing that required contact with a person.
Yeah.
These people.
They should have quarantined everyone who'd been on that ship, because it could have been Kira.
Yeah.
She was on the ship.
Well, she had on those protective fire gloves.
Yep. The oven gloves protect them.
The oven gloves. Just then Dax comes in to say that Julian is missing, and Sisko asks who accessed the runabout, and the computer says Bashir. Wah, wah. We've all figured out what happened.
They've all finally come to the conclusion.
Now we go on board the Norkova, and we see the uniforms these folks are wearing. They look like bulky sweats, but shiny.
Yeah.
They did not look great.
They look like discount cosplay uniforms.
The terrorists, or the soldiers of fortune, depending upon your perspective, beam into the ship and just straight up shoot the captain. And I'm like, how is there no security or shields on this ship when they're carrying this valuable duridium?
Yeah, they're really pretty bloodthirsty in that.
They shoot everyone.
Yeah, they were kind of brutal effects for the 90s, for network television. But there wasn't a lot of blood.
Yeah.
It was pretty clean.
No, we don't do blood really in Star Trek. Well, until now, with all the eye pulling out and eye poking in Discovery and the eye stuff in Picard. We're really into eyes all of a sudden. So they shoot everyone, and then they beam over Bashir. He raises shields and tells the terrorist guys to account for all 12 members of the crew and to kill them if they resist. He's got a lot of info about this ship.
Wonder who he paid off for that.
Yeah, I don't know. He says to lay in the new course, and then DS9 hits them with a tractor beam. Bashir says, that's impossible. That should be shut down. He doesn't know that Frowny-Face found his doohickey.
Yeah. He seems a little overconfident at this point.
Yeah. The guy at the helm says DS9 is hailing them, and Bashir, who's not Bashir, who's Vantika, says, hailing us? It's like the most dramatic delivery of those two words.
It is pretty funny.
It's like, never.
I do like the sort of drama at this. It is very sort of overplayed. But I guess it's a good way for Alexander Siddiq to really show that this is a different character from Bashir. Although it seems a little goofy, I think it does actually work quite well.
It is a little goofy.
Yeah.
It's a little melodramatic.
It's a little bit Kirk.
It is a little bit Kirk. I agree with that. Except not quite done as well.
Yeah.
He tells the helmsman to ignore the hail and engage the engines. He says they aren't going to get anywhere because of the tractor beam, but Vantika's like, yeah, but they also can't pull them in because we have our engines going, so it's a standoff. Then he opens the channel to Sisko, and Bashir says his name is Vantika, but I assume you already knew that. Sisko asks to talk to Bashir, and he's like, he's not available at the moment. He says Bashir's body looks good on him, but he's been rendered unconscious for the time being. He says he'll consider leaving his body if he releases the tractor beam, and Sisko says no. So Vantika is like, well, I'll just take the ship to warp and tear it apart. This seems pretty unlikely considering how hard he worked to stay alive.
Right.
He's chewing the scenery a little bit. Vantika says Sisko has a minute to decide what to do. Why do they always do that? Just go to warp. That would change his mind right quick.
Oh, well, we come on to that.
Yeah. Sisko is pretty annoyed. Kira says, let's fly in there and start shooting. Pretty much always her first suggestion.
I love it. She is following true to form.
Yes.
Can we shoot them down? No, Kira, you can't shoot them.
Sisko says if there's a hull breach and duridium is released into the system, then they'd have to evacuate every populated area. I'm like, really? If it's released into space?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
I believe that's what's called a MacGuffin.
Yeah, a device to move the story forward. We don't have to explain it.
Right, exactly.
Sisko asks Dax if they can disrupt Vantika's hold on Bashir. She says maybe she could design an EMP to disrupt Vantika's neural energy patterns. Sisko says she could run it along the tractor beam at the same frequency as the shield so that Vantika wouldn't see it. That also seems very convenient. She says, okay, but she needs some time. So Sisko starts trying to stall and asking for a guarantee he'll get Bashir back if he lets him leave.
You insult my intelligence.
Yes, that's what Vantika says. And he tells the helm to prepare to go to warp. Just go to warp. Don't prepare to go to warp. It's just a button. There's no... It's so ridiculously dramatic.
But Sisko does make a good call here. I mean, he realizes that Vantika's gone to all these lengths to preserve himself, so it seems pretty unlikely that he's just going to go and kill himself. He's going to try and figure out some way through this.
Yeah.
In my notes, I call the Vantika Bashir Vantashir.
Oh, that's good. Vantashir. Vantika says he doesn't think Sisko is ready to risk spreading Duridium all over the system. Sisko then looks at Dax, and she gives him that same, no, I'm not ready nod that Kirk's son gives in The Wrath of Khan when he looks at him to see if they're far enough away from Genesis. Vantika says, go to warp, but the helmsman is like, this plan sucks. I'm not going to do that. So Vantika just shoots him, and then he slowly and dramatically walks to the helm like, I'm going to do it myself.
Yep.
And of course, that's enough time, and Jadzia is ready, and they send the EMP up the tractor beam, and Vantika grabs his head and falls back on a chair.
Yep, looks like he's having a migraine.
Well, we've had a lot of migraines in these 8 episodes.
Good learning point here that you should always shoot the rebellious pirate.
Well, sure, he's not on your side either.
Yeah.
He didn't want to sacrifice himself, but then he got shot anyway, so he didn't win.
Not a real win situation for these people.
No, it's a lose-lose.
Yep.
You know what would have been a win? Maybe if he had just shot Vantika. That might have been the best option.
Yeah, then we wouldn't have had Bashir in the rest of the series.
We didn't have to kill him. You just knock him out.
Did they seem like the kind of people that knock people out?
No, they don't have stun. It's like the Romulan disruptor. There's no stun setting. After they send the EMP up the tractor beam and Bashir grabs his head, Sisko calls for Bashir, who wakes up sort of confused and unsure of where he is. Sisko's like, lower the shields. And he's like, what? Where am I? Just do it now. As he's reaching for it, he gets another brain zap, and he almost doesn't do it. But then he does, and they beam Bashir/Vantika right into Ops.
It's the classic trying to reach the button, and will he make it or not?
Oh, he just got it. And then they beam him, right into Ops, which they keep doing that. It's not safe. He's armed. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Right into Ops.
You have pointed that one out in the past.
It seems dangerous. And so then when Bashir/Vantika materializes, he says, it's okay, it's me. And then he gets another brain zap, and Sisko just shoots him, and he hits the floor. It was great.
No messing around from Sisko, just zap. I was expecting you to be cheering at that point, going, yay, you shot Bashir.
No. I don't wish people that much ill. Now we're in medical, and Dax has programmed the transporter to isolate any glial cells with Vantika's neural patterns. And they essentially beam Vantika out of Bashir's brain and into a petri dish, which is not really a petri dish, it's a micro-containment field.
Didn't Pulaski get into trouble for doing that in The Next Generation? A lot of fans didn't like that. It was abuse of the transporter.
There have been lots of questionable uses of the transport. I mean, let's be honest, the transport itself is quite a plot device.
It's like replicators.
I'm more likely to believe the replicators will exist.
I've always thought that the transporter would be more like a wormhole-style device, like something from Stargate. They could direct where the wormhole would open, and then they would walk through it, rather than break all the molecules down and reassemble them at the destination. That's just my thought.
Like Vibe in The Flash.
Oh, I don't know that character.
It's Sisko on the show.
Oh.
He opens up little holes in space and they jump through and end up somewhere else.
What, Avery is in The Flash?
No, his name is Sisko.
Ah.
I did not even think about that. Yeah, the character's name is Sisko.
Oh.
That's funny.
Okay.
Not this Sisko. It's a different Sisko. After the transport, they all look at the little petri dish, which I thought was cute. And then Dax scans Julian and says, it worked. They wake him up and he says he has a headache, and they all smile because there's a lot of headaches on this show. And happy music plays.
I really didn't like this.
The transporter thing?
No, they all wake up and he says he's got a headache and Sisko and Dax laugh. I thought that was the cheesiest sitcom crap of all time. What is this? Is this Alf?
Lots of Next Gen episodes ended this way, where like Data was taken over and tried to take over the ship. At the end, he's back to himself and they're all like, ha ha, everything's fine. I'm sure that'll never happen again.
I find that so cheesy.
Oh, it's Star Trek.
Police Squad did a great spoof of that kind of ending where they all freeze in the middle of a laugh.
I don't watch the spoofy shows.
I know. You missed a great show there, in my opinion.
Well, they play some happy music now, so you're supposed to know everything's fine. And then they show us an outside shot of the station, so we kind of jump ahead a little bit in time. And Kajada, Bashir, Dax, and Sisko are all staring at the Petri dish. And Kajada apologizes to Bashir, but he says they should have believed her, which is quite true. They should have believed her. He says he doesn't remember what happened, but he feels quite humiliated.
We see there a very humbled Bashir, so I think that was the lesson of the episode. Pride comes before a fall. He's come full circle from the beginning, so we've all learned something here.
So... Nice.
This ending is lifted from a cheesy 80s sitcom.
Oh, not the first time.
Hey.
Or the last. Dax then asks what she intends to do with the Petri dish. And Kajada said, is the custody of the prisoner returned to me? And Sisko's like, yep, what's left of him? And she just takes out her weapon and shoots the Petri dish and it's gone.
Beautiful.
Disappears.
Just beautiful. Yep. I thought that was a perfect ending. She was just killing.
I feel like she should have gotten to know Kira. They might have gotten along really well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Fast friends, right?
Oh, yeah. They could play a great drinking game. They would think of various scenarios, and in each one, every time they said, just shoot them, they'd take a drink.
Well, she could have asked Kira all about her history, and every time she said provisional government instead of drinking, she could have just shot something.
That would have been a good tail end of an episode.
That would have been better than the cheesy ending. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes. Way better. Plus, based on what happened there, I think she'd get on really well with Odo.
Black and white, guilty, dead.
Exactly. Odo probably wouldn't necessarily have used the weapon, but I could see he might have thrown him out of an airlock.
She does that. I mean, she shoots the dish and then she just leaves like, I'm done.
Turns around and leaves.
And they all look at each other surprised. Why are they surprised? That was extremely on brand for her.
I think because the humans at this time have evolved beyond capital punishment. So the idea of executing somebody, no matter how guilty they are, really isn't in their DNA, as it were. Of people don't even look at that as an option. So having that happen sort of like in...
Except maybe Kira.
Well, but Kira isn't human, and she's not Federation.
Oh, I
or
see.
Starfleet. So I think that actually gives, again, another sort of Star Trek-y view of the world, of the way the humans in that are very surprised.
Yeah.
Or the Federation citizens are all very, very surprised by that. Even Sisko seems genuinely surprised by what happened.
He was definitely surprised. Do you have any other over-analysis of this episode or how it fits into the overall season?
I forgot to mention earlier when there was a creeping scene at the bar.
Yeah.
We see Morn's back. We don't actually see a full view of Morn on air.
Yeah, I forgot about Morn because you didn't bring him up. Come on.
I think this episode, I don't have a lot of over-analysis on this episode because there's a lot that's just put out there. There was some interesting or weak writing. I personally think that it would have been more believable instead of having the, it'll spread Duridium across the system MacGuffin. They'd just gone with, Sisko did not want to lose Bashir.
Yeah. I mean, we would have bought that, right?
He doesn't want to lose anyone in his command, and he's a responsible commander. And Ty Kajada, that even though it was a sort of a small character, I liked the way that the actress did give a very solid feel to this focused law enforcement officer within the Kobliad society, and probably follows Kobliad norms.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and also it kind of ties into my Women in the Future analysis. I thought that Kajada was great. There was nothing about her that was specifically male or specifically female. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there was no real stereotype about her. Instead, she was just a straight up character who was obsessed with her job.
She was a professional.
Exactly. But she was a little obsessed, which as it turned out was rightfully so.
Yeah.
I thought she was great, and she kind of risked everything to prove her point.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I thought that was good. I also thought that actress was great. She was, she was solid.
And the way she portrayed sort of frustration that she'd seen lots of these things happen before, and it was almost like people are ignoring her and not listening to advice that he's not really dead.
But she's got that funny line in there where she says, "Don't patronize me." And I didn't actually think Sisko was patronizing her. I thought she was maybe just being a little sensitive.
Yeah, well,
which you would be. Again, when you're obsessed with something, you just, you get defensive.
Once again, she's seeing this pattern repeat.
Right. Then we had Dax, who was really the one who solved the whole thing. She's the one who figured out how Vantika transferred himself into someone else. She wasn't smart enough to figure out it was Bashir, but she also wasn't there. And they maybe didn't tell anyone that he had grabbed Bashir's throat. Like, they didn't think that was important. Yeah. But they should
All those sort of things should go down in the log.
Yeah, they should all go into the report.
If Kira has got enough time to call the shuttle and said 4 to beam over, she could have added to the log, oh yeah, the dead dude tried to strangle Bashir.
And Kira, at the beginning, she was kind of all of us when she was ready to tell Bashir what a jerk he was being before she got interrupted.
That was pretty funny.
And then she saved the structural integrity of the ship. She put out the fire. She pulled Vantika off of Bashir. So she was the hero.
Found some oven gloves.
Yeah, and she oven gloves. So it was a pretty good episode for the female characters.
It was
overall.
good to see Dax actually being sort of science-y.
Yeah, but we still had to go through the leering part. And I guess I was trying to ignore that, but we did still have to have that. You got to get rid of that garbage. She's a science officer. I'm just waiting for this to stop.
I'm not sure when it does, but
we'll see. All right, let's go to thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What's your rating?
I'm having to go with neutral because although I liked the show overall, I thought some of it was just kind of cheesy and the final act was relatively weak. But yeah, I wouldn't class it as bad. I would just go as neutral.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a bad episode. I don't know. I'm finding it funny that you don't like these cheesy endings. I guess I'm kind of used to them. The cheesy endings are not bothering me. I was way more bothered by the nonsense with Quark and Dax. But the goofy endings, I mean, so many times in Next Gen, the ending was just sort of goofy like that. So I accept that as Star Trek. It doesn't really fly today, especially now when we're not episodic really anymore, right? All the shows are serialized. And so the goofy endings really would stand out if you tried to do that.
I guess I just feel it kind of dated.
It is dated. Oh, I will grant you that. But there's a lot of things that are dated in these episodes. Yeah.
But I still enjoyed the episode.
I also enjoyed the episode. I think I'd give it a neutral rating as well. I'm not sure I have anything else more positive or negative to say about it, but I found it very watchable.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, that's progressing the show. If we're going from you going, oh, how many more of these can I watch to, oh yeah, this was very watchable. So I look at that as something of a win.
Yeah, I think you can look at it that way, but I don't want to watch this creeping stuff anymore. I want them to stop doing it.
Okay, that's a very valid point. Yeah, I think we've come to the end of that, and I've wrapped up everything I want to say.
Me too. That's it for Season 1, Episode 8. So, in the meantime, if you'd like to tell us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there and listen to all of our other awesome podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. That's it from me.
And that's it for me.